Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Monday, almost Tuesday, but certainly not Wednesday, except for hello, everyone, and welcome to another Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to be doing a rundown of Tinto Talks number 39, which is the last of our catch-up episodes, so we can stop making fries jokes. The day of the week where you get into a new Tinto Talks, the special post where we gather feedback for the very secret game with codename Project Caesar, aka Project Teaser. It's actually Project Teaser, not Project Caesar. This would be Project Kaiser, Project Taser, sometimes. But today we're going to be looking at power rankings, and this is going to be the topic of said video that you are watching now on a Monday, except probably not for you. It's probably on a Tuesday. But if it's on a Wednesday, happy Wednesday to you. We met you on the right day. While we may have some skills, some of us do, and some experience in designing games. We are not perfect. That's a tragedy. This is why we miss Happy Wednesdays, because we're not perfect. And that is why we are doing these Tinto Talks. Don't you mean Happy Wednesdays? So we can get feedback on what may be less than stellar or stellaris, and for us to think about what we have done and have not thought about. Sit in the corner and think of what you've done. Sometimes it's small, easy things that we can do immediately, and we will tell you in the thread directly, and sometimes it's larger things, which we will talk about later. Our Tinto Talks a month ago about great powers and hegemons was one of the very few we had. That's a loud car. Talk about one of the very few. That's got a big puppy engine. Our Tinto Talks from a month ago about great powers and hegemons was one of the very few we have made had a negative reaction, but what was great with it was that we had plenty of great constructive and usable feedback from it. Pretty much everything in this thread today has been built on community ideas that have been revised and discussed internally. I think that this might have been one of the few things I actually left feedback on, if I recall correctly, because they had like an arbitrary number of power ranks, and I thought that that was a really disappointing thing. And so I think with my forum account, I've made like 2 comments ever. And one of them was feedback on this. I was like, I think that this is a bad idea. I think that you can make it some sort of heuristic sort of thing. And so we'll see if that gets updated here. Country ranks. First of all, we reworked it so that rank for a country is now more about flavor and internal mechanics, moving away from unlocking of powerful diplomatic actions such as intervene and threaten war. Sounds good. So that they are for great powers instead. There was also some modifiers such as moving away from them so that they are from great powers instead. Is country rank not going to be great power? Okay, well, fair enough. There were also so it's not going to be like a kingdom, empire, this type of thing. Instead, there's going to be a separate, segregated great power list, I guess. There were also some modifiers that more fit being a great power than a kingdom, an empire in name, like the power projection and bonus the rank that it gave. Okay, so it sounds like they are segregating these 2 things. We have kingdom, we have country rank, and we have a number of artists, shout out to artistry, diplomatic range, capacity, diplomats, great power score, exempt from forfeit. Okay, consent alliance, guarantee, etc. Also, a new icon for the rank. Sounds good. Great powers. First of all, being a great power is not without cost, and is now considered one increases the amount your gold country needs to spend to keep up its legitimacy. Also, all great powers have a negative opinion of -25 of each other. That seems fair enough. The bonuses you get now scale with the position you have amongst the great powers, where being number 1 gives the highest one. We see that, I don't know who's... Okay, so we see the Yuan dynasty at number 1, and France at number 5, as makes sense. Giving... I assume that 5 is the final rank, because if this is a multiplier of 1, and this is a multiplier of 5, scaling linearly, that is quite a strong scaling. We're getting plus 10 power projection, plus 10 monthly prestige, 5 diplo capacity, extra diplomats, expected war cost of court, rather, can intervene in war, can enforce peace, can threaten war. Although unlocking all of these just by being rank 1 is pretty nice as well. Yuan gets a bit more than France, makes sense. Another change we did was that the amount of great powers is now fluid. Thank you. It was so silly that they had it be entirely Yeah, I mean, this is something I left a bit of feedback on personally. The way that Victoria does it, for example, is just fine in an overall sense, although I wish there was a little bit more kind of play with that system, or that system felt more important in regards to prestige. But Victoria 3, like, you can have only one great power if you want. You could have situations where there is exactly one great power, or you could have situations where there's 10 because it's calculated based on either an average or based on a percentage of the leader. So it depends on how many countries are close to the number one power rank in the world. There is always a minimum of great powers, though, and a maximum, which depends on the total number of countries in the world. Okay, sounds like they will have a system other than or different than Victoria 3, which will guarantee certain parameters, but there will be a little bit of fluidity. Let's keep going. Hegemonies. We have done a lot of changes to both the system for hegemonies and how they work as well. First of all, we changed the hegemony system to not be unlocked by advances, but instead only become available when the Age of Discovery starts. Why, you may now ask? Well, why? Well, this is important for new mechanics, as you'll no longer actively be able to decide to become a hegemon, but the hegemon is proclaimed on you from being the strongest in a particular area. Interesting. Every month, the strongest in the area, the hegemony concerns, will be proclaimed hegemon. If there is a hegemon already, you will need it to be at least 10% more powerful in that area. That's always nice. When they have various modifiers to prevent flipping back and forth repeatedly, because that's always kind of an obnoxious thing. So for the military hegemon, if France has 200k soldiers, Sweden needs at least 240k soldiers to become the new military hegemon. Or to reduce France's army to be smaller in a way. Yes, the euphemisms for picking on France and eliminating their army, in a way. In what way? A way. Which way? Just a way. You will not lose hegemony if you lose a war, though. Another major change is that you can hold multiple hegemonies, and now there are some drawbacks to being a hegemon. This seems fine enough. Of course, all other countries distrust a hegemon for every hegemony they hold, so you get a minus 20 opinion for every country. Oof, that sounds bad. So if you hold all three, in theory, you'd get minus 60, and a 20% extra impact on aggressive expansion. Ouch. There's also an increase to expected court costs and a monthly prestige gain. Interesting. We also removed the system of hegemonies becoming more powerful the longer you hold them, and removed most stacking modifiers and having them merely one bonus each. However, each hegemony gives you 2 unlocks. One unique cabinet action each, and one unique diplomatic action that each can be used while you hold that hegemon. So let's take a look. We do see economic hegemon of the Yuan dynasty. It gives minus food consumption, force divert trade, and reduce paperwork. And so this is kind of the unique ones you unlock, and the reduced food consumption seems pretty good. The UI is also showing you all competing powers. I'm not sure competing is exactly relevant here. Not exactly relevant because the Yuan dynasty has 3 times the Sultanate of Delhi's, kind of, or over 3 times their economic power or their income from trade and tax. We also added 2 hegemonies since last month, but what do hegemonies give you then? Well, economic hegemon, this is the great power that has the highest income from trade and taxes. As you can see from the screenshot above, their units consume less food, which can be useful over the course of a campaign. They can also use the diplomatic action divert trade, which forces non-great power country to give up part of their merchant capacity and power in all markets they are present in. This cannot be done to anyone that has their own market, though, but this forced divert trade cannot be broken for 10 years unless a war breaks out between the hegemon and the target. The cabinet action this hegemon gets is reduced paperwork, which increases the production efficiency in a given area. So what is an area? Area. An area is a group of provinces, and a province is a group of locations. A production efficiency is a powerful modifier, which directly impacts the output of a building without increasing its input requirements. That's always good. That's better than throughput, as it were. We see next up is the naval hegemon. This is the great power that has the most heavy ships of all the great powers. Their bonus is 10% less naval damage taken. Talk about, like, piling it on. If you already have the most heavies and then you get this, that's going to be something. They could use the diplomatic action force embargoes, which makes the target non-greater power embargo another country. The embargo country country cannot trade in the market they're embargoed in, and their locations will not belong to that market, both which are rather non-ideal. The forced embargo cannot be broken for 10 years unless a war breaks out between the hegemon and the target. The hegemon can use the cabinet action naval focus, which increases the maritime growth and harbor suitability of all ports in the area, which, if I'm not mistaken, helps to establish greater control. And I wonder if you use this in the home area, kind of where you have, if this just will branch out control everywhere categorically. But if so, this seems particularly strong. Is this stronger than reduced paperwork? I'm not really sure. Military hegemon. This is the great power with the biggest army of all the great powers. Their bonus is 10% cheaper war score costs. That is spooky. They have a violate sovereignty diplomatic action. This is probably the most requested feature of ever by any warmongering player, and allows you to enforce military access and food access on any non-great power country for 6 months. This means that you can pretty much ignore neutrality and make your army well-fed as it catches up to another theater. There's a slight drawback. It's so weird coming from Victoria 3 where there's no military access, but there is violate sovereignty. So it's like the exact reverse, where everyone wants military access, but what they have access to is violate sovereignty. There's a slight drawback in that the country who you march through will dislike you and get a casus belli on you. Makes sense. The cabinet action this hegemon gets is soldiers as workforce, which gives you faster construction speed in an area. Very cool. This is something that I've always thought was under-implemented in games, although it kind of applies not to the standing armies. I think of the era of 1399 and following, standing armies were maybe a little bit more common, but a lot of military forces were used specifically in agriculture and construction, and they had like seasonal kind of fighting situations where you would have like during the harvest time they would be farmers, and then they would be professional soldiers during non-harvest and planting seasons and stuff like this. Same with construction. I'm thinking of Egypt in regards to the construction, and I'm thinking of China in regards to the farming. But it is, if you have able-bodied people and seasonal types of things, it's kind of makes sense to do all your warfare in the off season, especially if everyone needs to plant and do this type of stuff anyways. Kind of a bit of an interesting phenomenon, and I wish it was represented more often in games. This impacts roads, buildings, and so on, so that it can be useful to get more barracks, forts, and iron mines quickly for the war machine. We have cultural hegemon. We do love our culture. This is the first of the new ones and is granted to the great power with the highest cultural influence. Makes sense. Their bonus is 25% growth to cultural tradition growth. It seems a little snowbally or win more aim. They can use the diplomatic action force change court language. Yikes. This forces a non-great power country to change their court language to yours, which further strengthens your stronghold on culture. This cannot be changed for 10 years unless a war breaks out between the hegemon and the target. This hegemon can use the cabinet action assimilate area, which allows you to assimilate pops in an entire area at once, which is a few times more powerful than promote culture, cabinet action, which can only target one province at a time. This seems really strong, although I generally kind of prefer the more peaceful and trade-oriented playstyle, more culture-oriented playstyle, so this kind of jives with me a little bit better than, military hegemon, this type of thing. But this one definitely sounds interesting. And then we have diplomatic hegemon. This is the second of our new hegemonies, and is granted to the great power with the highest diplomatic reputation. Their bonus is 30% higher impact for improving relations. This is probably one where it's difficult to evaluate how good it is without actually getting a game, because if you're capping out, if there's just a few countries you want to improve relations with and you're hitting a relation cap with them anyways, this bonus will be rather underwhelming. But if you're always wanting to improve relations and it's like always good, then this will be useful. They can use the diplomatic action influence country, which increases trust and opinion in a target non-greater power country. Non-greater power or great power? Who knows? Okay, this seems like it's probably going to be good, and allow you to... I think if you're increasing trust, well, if it's like EU4 and bringing people over a specific breakpoint is a really critical thing, then increasing opinion, above a certain threshold might which you might not otherwise be able to access or get this trust up, might allow you to kind of squeeze through the closer kind of diplomatic actions that you would otherwise not be able to do. And maybe this ends up being particularly strong, especially because it's like, let's say you have 5 tools by which to try and get someone to agree to a diplomatic pact with you of some kind. This is like the 6th tool in the toolbox, which unlocks maybe new stuff. Their cabinet action is Diplomatic Core, which allows the hegemon to dramatically increase their diplomatic capacity while gaining more diplomats each month. That seems particularly strong, especially if you need to maintain a lot of diplomacy simultaneously, which if you're kind of leaning into diplomatic reputation, one can assume that this is kind of a feature of your run. What comes to mind is, of course, the HRE type of game, where you are trying to get electors to vote for you and allow you to maintain, super high relations, influence them, and then use the diplomatic course to kind of interact with more of them at one time. All of this together makes a lot of sense that this would be particularly strong. This is probably, at first blush, this seems to be the one that is probably most context contingent in terms of strength, whereas all the other ones are probably strong in a wide variety of situations. I don't think they've really gone into the negatives, the drawbacks of being a hegemon, other than the -20 relations. Maybe that's the only drawback. The getting minus relations with people and then getting diplomatic hegemon seems, maybe that's even counterproductive if the modifier is, that is an interesting one. You get -20 relations with every country and 20 extra aggressive expansion. This, whatever the bonus is for diplomatic hegemon, just has to outweigh this, right? In some way. Because if you get -20 relations and then you're better at improving relations, that seems really kind of silly. And then if you get influence countries, which can increase the trust and opinion, but you're locked in, like, you can't increase this by more than 20, then it's net negative, right? So I guess that's maybe something to consider. I don't think I'll leave feedback for that specifically, but it'll be a little bit silly if the diplomatic hegemon ends up being kind of a wash, or maybe the diplomatic hegemon should be exempt from the -20 relations in particular, and have some other sort of penalty. It'd be interesting if they had penalties in other areas, in like the other kind of spheres, while doing well in the diplomatic one. Like maybe they have a harder time in the military because they have to pull their punches and obey by like a certain criteria of war, something like this. That's probably too deep in the tank. But we see the 5 great powers at the start of the game, with number 1, of course, being the Yuan dynasty, and number 5, of course, being France, the Mamluks, and the Shogunate, and the Sultanate of Delhi, all particularly strong. We got the sprites and stuff too, but stay tuned, as next week we'll go through government reforms, and by next week we mean last week when we went through government reforms, and now I think we're all caught up. So on this Wednesday we will be getting a caught up Happy Wednesday, and then there will be no more ketchup and no more fries, and so no more ketchup-y fries, but we do have Happy Wednesdays on the horizon. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, YouTube algorithm thing, etc., mostly etc. And also, have a happy Monday, but for you, probably a Tuesday. But for Johan, when he wrote this, of course, a Tuesday, because they write it the day before, but he gave it to people as a Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday.